Right, so today we're just going to talk through wedding ceremonies and some of the things that can go wrong during then. Now, I shot one on the 24th of May and the 24th of April, sorry. And whilst everything went excellent and the video was delivered without issue and the clients are really happy, that doesn't mean that there weren't mistakes or technical failures that happened on the day. And yeah, I thought we'd get outside and talk about some of those things. So one of these issues was with the actual gimbal and the camera. This is not the first time I've used the Crane 2, but what I did do on the wedding is I actually attached the cable to the camera so that you could do the remote control from the actual gimbal. Now, I had 3 cameras set up and the gimbal was going to be like the centerpiece so that you got the bride walking in and following the bride down. Now, I initiated the record from the actual gimbal and this recorded the ceremony fine, and when everything was done and dusted, I stopped the recording on the gimbal and for some reason the camera wouldn't stop recording. Now, no matter what I did with the gimbal, it just wouldn't stop recording, which meant then I tried stopping the recording then on the camera by the shutter, and it was still unresponsive. Pulled the cable out to make sure that it wasn't the connection that was interfering. Still nothing. It looked like the actual GH5 had crashed. Whether it was because it was connected to the gimbal, I have no idea, but that was frustrating because the only way to stop it was I had to pull the battery out of the camera. Now, even though I had dual SD in the card, this did mean that I lost the entire footage. So this is where you have to have redundancies. I wasn't worried. The fact that it happened. It's just one of those technical failures. And that's why I have multiple cameras, so that I can say to the client, no matter what happens on the day, it would have to be an act of God for all the cameras, all the audio devices to fail, which would have been, unless there's a tsunami that actually took the entire wedding out, that's not going to happen. But yeah, it was frustrating, but it wasn't the end of the world. So have multiple backups, have multiple cameras, don't rely on just one camera, and certainly don't fall into the trope of you have to have the single best camera. If you've got a budget and you're shooting weddings, buy cameras that you can afford 3 times. So you can get a second-hand GH5 for $750 or $790. You can get multiple cameras for that for the single, was it FX3 or any one of those Sony, what have you, buddy. But my point is that don't rely on one camera. You have to have multiple backups because technical failures do happen. Yeah, so that was the first issue. So the second issue was not a technical failure, but it was a mistake on my part, but it was actually compounded by the first issue. So where the first issue we had the camera failure, that meant then I had to rely on my backups. Now, one is a GH5, which has really good dynamic range, and then the G7 then, whilst it has 8 stops of dynamic range, it only has 2 stops above for the highlight. So that means there's not a fantastic amount of dynamic range there. Now, everything looked fine in the camera, but the way that I set the exposure is that I used the waveform meter on the GH5. So everything looked lovely, and because it's a busy day like weddings are, I applied the same settings of 2.8, 400 ISO on the actual the G7, and it looked fine, but there was a spotlight above, and what happened is that when the bride was standing there, the spotlight was just shining a little bit on her shoulder in certain places, and I think it was about a stop overexposure for that, and what happened is that it clipped. So then it meant then in post I had to fix that then with like color compressor and certain other things just to blend that in a bit better. So make sure that you have equipment, if you backup equipment, make sure that it mirrors the capabilities of your main gear. And that's the whole reason why I'll be purchasing another GH5, is because that backup would have been fine and everything would have matched perfectly, but it did take me more work in post to fix it. So it was a minor issue, but it was easily dealt with and no one's none the wiser until they see this video. But what a glorious day. So right now we're down in Dufferin Gardens and it is absolutely beautiful. It's actually quiet and I'm surprised I'm able to do this today, because usually it's really quite busy and I'm not very good when it comes to vlogging outside. Plus we're testing the BTS, this camera, to see what it performs like. So yeah, it's nice. Right, so the next mistake then wasn't a major mistake, but it's more of a, I would say, a workflow issue. So one of the things that I need to do is that with the Insta mic, there is a magnet that you can place on this on the actual microphone. Now, this is an omnidirectional microphone, and in the video you can hear some of the plurals where they p and the buzz. Now this is going straight into the microphone where the actual mic is. Now what I should have done is turn this upside down, because it is an omnidirectional microphone and I could have reduced that. So that is the next mistake really, is that I should have turned that upside down so that when it was close to the mouth it would have avoided all of that. But that microphone itself worked out perfect, because it allowed me to put that in the wedding dress as well of the bride, which was perfect because that audio then came through really crystal clear. And
my life with you.
I promise to share my life with you.
To be honest and trusting.
To be honest and trusting.
And that I will love.
That I will love.
Honour.
Honour.
And care for you.
And care for you.
With
that was fantastic. So if you are going to use something like the Instamic, I'd highly recommend that you just turn it upside down so that you avoid those issues. So the last issue I wouldn't say was much of, well, it was an issue, but it's the actual microphone placement. So in the ceremony everything was mic'd to the jacket of the groom and the officiant, so that wasn't a problem. But when it came to the speeches, the groom decided that he was going to take off his jacket, which meant the lavalier was nowhere near where he was, which was frustrating, but that's the whole reason why I had a backup with the Instamic, and that was placed on the actual microphone that was provided by the venue. Now I couldn't plug directly into the outlet of the microphone, so that's why I used the Instamic. So in that case it worked out fine. But I think for the workflow next time is that if you are going to be micing up like the bride, or not the bride but the groom and the best man or anybody that's doing the speeches, don't put it in the jacket. It wasn't his fault, it's just one of those things. It was a warm day, everybody was boiling, and he naturally took the jacket off and did his speech. But while I was holding the camera I was just like, no, the microphone. So yeah, so what I would suggest is that either you put it in the waistcoat, or even better, I would say just put it in the actual shirt. Obviously that means it's a bit more time, but I think that if you're only relying on those lavalier microphones and you don't have an additional backup, then you need to spend a bit of extra time putting it into the shirt and saying this is just in case you take your jacket off or whatever reason. So yeah, that was the other one, which is fun and a pretty tree, and that's that one. And that is essentially it. That was pretty much the only things that really went wrong. So a few of them were minor, that could all be fixed, which wasn't a problem because I had redundancy, and that is the key point. Don't rely on just one item. You have to have a lot of backups in place to support you. Now, the only big issue that I had was obviously with the GH5 and that the footage being lost. Now, that is disastrous, but I didn't worry about it either because I had enough backup, so I knew that I was covered. And that is the key point. The last thing you want to be doing is absolutely bricking it when you're shooting a ceremony because you've lost the footage. Now, there are workflow issues that you'll have afterwards, like people formatting an SD card before the project is done, but that's by the by. But on the day of the shooting, you just need to make sure that you have everything in place to back things up. And that is it. That was the day in itself. It was a beautiful day. The actual place that they got married at was stunning, which was Pencoed Estate House. And a beautiful day. Now, I've already recorded this video. I've already recorded this video once, but I decided that I'm going to use the Insta360, get out the house and redo it and see how it turns out. And then I've got a backup if I'm not happy with this. But I'm down Dufferin Gardens today, and what a beautiful place. I've been here a few times. We've got membership here, so it doesn't cost me anything apart from £12 a month to get in. And it is absolutely gorgeous. So if you're in the venue or the vicinity, I definitely come down. It's beautiful. It's nice and relaxing. Great place for the kids. It's lovely. Yep, so if you like the content, please give me a thumbs up and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.